Hmm. Peace and blessings, family. I am here today to share some full moon eclipse wisdom. Today at 6:02 Eastern Time, we have a full moon lunar eclipse, 6:02 a.m. Eastern Time, and of course, it would be different times in other locations in the world. The purpose of this now moment and this sharing is to look at some of the extremely powerful planetary and astrological frequencies that are happening relative to this full moon lunar eclipse. It is full at 16 degrees of Taurus. So when the moon is 16 degrees of Taurus, then the sun is 16 degrees of Scorpio. This is an oppositional alignment and accentuated in its power by it being a full moon lunar eclipse. Whenever the moon is full, whether it be an eclipse or a regular full moon, there is a tremendous amplification of emotional energy. The moon represents the subconscious, the lunar aspect of our being, the moon aspect of our being, is an access code to the Akashic records. The Akashic records represent the book of God's remembrance, universal consciousness. And so the moon is our access code to universal consciousness, our access code to cosmic consciousness. It is the microcosmic container of the macrocosmic all that is, relative to the wisdom and the circumstantial occurrences within life. With it being full in Taurus, Taurus is the natural ruler of the second house of the zodiac, having to do with values and also having to do with valuables. And so this is an opportunity to look at what are the values that we hold, and do we place a greater value or a greater significance on valuables than we do on values. In the human experience, so many people look at valuables as somehow being of greater importance and significance than values. And yet it is the value that brings about the manifestation of the valuables. So here we have an opportunity to learn that our formless values are of greater importance, and that part of us that gives birth to the manifested valuables. So the wisdom of the values is brought forth by Scorpio, but also Scorpio ruling the 8th house of the zodiac. It represents all of the valuables that are, were, or ever will be. Universal valuables. That's why the 8th house of Scorpio is the house of inheritance, where we gain access to the assets of others. We are blessed with the assets of others. So along with this full moon in oppositional alignment with Scorpio, we also have Mercury in Scorpio in a very close conjunction to the sun and therefore in an opposition to the moon. We have Venus fairly close as well at 20 degrees. Again, the sun and moon axis is 16 degrees. Venus is 20 degrees of Scorpio. And then Saturn is squaring this full moon axis. And so Saturn is forming a T-square. A T-square is much like a four-legged table that's missing a leg. And if a table is a four-legged table and it's missing a leg, in order for that table to stand, all of the weight has to shift toward that leg, which is opposite the missing leg of the table, and it can stand, because if the energy shifts towards the missing leg, then a table will certainly fall over. So the planet Saturn is like that leg, which is opposite the missing leg, and then the full moon with the sun and the moon represent the other two legs. And so the energy is focused as an apex within Saturn. So Saturn is the key to accessing the transformational power of this full moon lunar eclipse. Saturn is accountability and it is responsibility. And so the fact that it is squaring Venus, we get to look at and ask the question, where are we with our accountability and responsibility around relationships? Our accountability and responsibility around money. Venus is ruler of both money and also ruler of relationships. And so where are we regarding accountability in our relationship interchanges with all of our relations? When we are engaging in relationships, do we recognize that beloved as a mirrored reflection of some vital part of who we are? That is the highest responsibility in the relationship exchange, is to recognize that that beloved is mirroring some vital part of our own self. We get to learn about who we are. You know, when I relate to you, I learn and I see, and yet my greatest learning is always about me. And so relationship must be the key to my self-mastery. So with Saturn being this apex of the T-square, we can really up-level our sense of responsibility. We can up-level our methodology. You know, maybe we have a methodology to bring about the quality of relationship that we want, or that very specific significant other that we want. Saturn also being a resonance of concrete manifestation, so we can bring relationship into manifestation, but we can also use the imagination, I magi, in action in order to embrace the reality of relationship, all the relationships that we want, even before they come into crystallized manifestation. By virtue of the imagination, we can be in appreciation for all our relations and all of our relationship interchanges even before they manifest. This is the pre-memoration of the relationship fulfillment. And one of the things that is helping us to do that is the planet Neptune, which is in Pisces, 22 degrees, and it's in close enough proximity degree-wise to be making a trine to the sun in Scorpio and making what is called a sextile to the moon in Scorpio. And both the trine and the sextile represent a very harmonious exchange between planets. So Neptune is acting as a mediator planet. It's the mediator of this intense energy of the full moon lunar eclipse. Sometimes in the eclipse experience or the full moon experience, it can be very intense and sometimes an unpleasant experience when there is a sense of wanting to create a polarization or to choose up sides with one end of the full moon or the other. But the key is, how do we bring the Scorpio energy and the Taurian energy into a harmonic exchange, a harmonious exchange with each other? How do we recognize that they come together to reveal one another to each other? For the negatives within Scorpio are canceled out by the positives within Taurus, and the negatives within Taurus is canceled out by the positives within Scorpio. For example, Taurus being fixed earth in the shadow expression can become overly identified and overly possessive of the material things of life. Whereas the Scorpio brings in an energy that is of a more elevated consciousness that can recognize that there's a formlessness. For example, there's a formlessness with Scorpio being fixed water. Water is very fluid and it ties into the formlessness of spirit. And so Scorpio brings the wisdom to Taurus to be in appreciation of the abundance and the prosperity, even in its formless state. But also, Scorpio brings the wisdom of recognizing the universal abundance. See, in truth, what it takes to make up your abundance or my abundance is all of the abundance that is, was, or ever will be. That every abundant being in life are representing an abundance that is the belonging of all of us. Not only is there a oneness of wholeness of being, there is also a oneness of wholeness of abundance. And the wisdom in that is, let's say if I am so-called lacking abundance and I have the presence of mind and heart to look at all of the abundant beings and then to say, oh my God, look at how abundant I am through these parts of me, rather than feeling a separation from the abundance that I witness, I feel a joining and a oneness with that abundance. And in truth, I am one with every abundant being because I am a cellular counterpart within every being, just as you are. And likewise, we all have a cellular counterpart within us for every being in the whole of existence. Just as in our physical body, we can take one cell from anywhere within the body and recreate the whole body. One cell from anywhere within the body carries the entire genetic blueprint of the whole body. So one cell from anywhere within the body can create the whole body. And likewise, you, me, and every one of us are a soul in the body of the universe, and the universe is a multifaceted cell in the body of our soul. Any and everything to be known about the whole of the universe can be deciphered from the various and multitudinous cellular counterparts that are within us. And that means that all of the great abundance in the whole of life also exists within all of us. Scorpio can be tied into a universal sense of beingness. It is also the alchemy of transforming poison into potion, transforming base metals into gold, transforming darkness into light. Now Saturn making the square to Mercury in Scorpio, which is conjunct the sun and opposite the moon, is saying that we are meant to have an up-leveling of our accountability regarding communication. Saturn to Mercury says, okay, it's time to be more responsible in the way that we communicate and in what we communicate. That might mean taking responsibility for sharing the things communicationally that the ego part of us may be afraid of sharing. It's time to really come forward with the truths that we are meant to share. Saturn being in Aquarius, which is community, tribal community, and so it represents our interconnectedness with all other beings. And so it's saying that in our communications, Mercury, let's be responsible for the oneness that we share with every other being, so that in our communication, we are benevolent and we are harmonious, and we're offering communication to others that would be something that helps to uplift them, something that helps to better them in some way. Saturn in opposition to the full moon in Taurus is saying that it's time for a greater accountability with regards to our emotional being. To recognize the way in which our emotions and our feelings are our allies. The power of feelings is that they represent being. The root of our being is in our feelings. Whereas the root of our doing is much more so in our thinking. Thinking is very objective and very outward, whereas our feelings are subjective and very inward. And being is that which gives birth to all of the outwardness of doing. Being is that which gives birth to the doing, achieving, and the creating. And so here we have a responsibility to recognize that the root of our self-worth and the root of our life purpose is not in our doing, achieving, and creating, but rather in our being. When the moon is fed into the energy of Saturn, it offers a greater depth and a more expansive understanding regarding the practicality of life. Saturn is the practicality of life, and of course Taurus to some extent represents the practicality of life as well. Saturn in squared relationship with Uranus is an indication of taking responsibility, Uranus, for some of our, or for our higher consciousness. Uranus is the higher mind. It represents cosmic consciousness. Mercury is the everyday mind. Mercury is 15 degrees of Scorpio, Uranus is 16 degrees of Taurus, and so that is a very close oppositional alignment. And so we are meant to bring about an up-leveling of our everyday mind, Mercury. See, it's very easy to elevate the mercurial mind into the cosmic consciousness frequency of the planet Uranus. So these are a few of the things. I do want to say a little more about Neptune as the apex planet, because Neptune is supreme formlessness. It is also cosmic consciousness. It is also compassion. So one of the great antidotes to any intensity or difficulty that we might feel with this full moon lunar eclipse is the compassion that Neptune represents. So we want to really come into a greater sense of compassion for ourselves relative to any emotional erraticness or emotional twistedness. With Uranus and the moon conjunct, there can be emotional roller coaster-like experiences. So it's a very intense energy that we're dealing with in this full moon lunar eclipse. And of course, eclipses also indicate that we have the opportunity to address some of the shadows of life, and some of the pains of life. Of course, the central core of the shadow, or the central core of the darkness, is always light, because light owns the center of everything, and everything that is of a shadow nature, of a negative nature, is always on the surface. Eclipses also represent our capacity to see into the hidden places of life. And so this is a little bit of wisdom on the full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus. I also want to bring forth the awareness that in the central core of your being and the central core of my being is the knowledge of everything that is, was, or ever will be. That everything that we learn is not so much a gathering of information or insight from out there, but rather a summoning forth and an activation of the information that exists within us. We are microcosmic containers of all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge, all of the insight that is, was, or ever will be. Even in the human journey, when we are caught in the lower frequencies, we don't know that we know all of that. And yet this is a time for remembering. So let's take a moment now and feel the resonant connection to every being who is fully awakened. Every ascended master, every angel, every higher dimensional being, the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Sirians, the Lyrans, all of the advanced societies that have evolved to places where our Earth and those of us upon this earth have yet to evolve to. We are one with every evolved being. Let us claim that reality. Let us call forth the activation of all of the evolved beings that live as cellular counterparts within the depths of our being. Let us feel the sense of accountability and responsibility for our feeling nature, recognizing that our feelings are our allies, allowing our feelings to become that grand frequency of receptivity that can draw forth all of the blessings that we are meant to experience. Let our feeling nature be a vibrational match for everything that is good and beautiful, everything that will up-level our being, everything that will quicken our spirit. Let us be of the awareness, by virtue of Moon and Uranus conjunct, that we can utilize our feeling nature to pour out the baptism of blessing upon every being in all existence. As Uranus is a representation of the oneness, of wholeness, of being. Let us receive the quickening and the up-leveling of our lower mercurial mind by virtue of this presencing with the planet Uranus. Let us bring forth a sense of joy unto all of our relations and all of our relationships. And by virtue of the forgiving frequency and the compassionate frequency of Neptune, let us remember our painful relationships of the past with a greater sense of joy and allowance. And when we think back on old relationships, let it be that we give so much more attention to that which was beautiful, even if the beauty of old relationships was only 10% and the pain was 90%. Let us give greater attention to the 10% that was beautiful. And by virtue of focusing our attention upon the goodness of our past relationships, we become a greater vibrational match for attracting goodness and fruitfulness in our current relationships as they unfold into our future. Let us feel at one with every being that is totally fulfilled in relationship. Let us recognize that they are our own self, by extension. And so we link up the telepathic battery cables, our heart mind to their heart mind, and initiate the soul jumpstart. Let us celebrate the fact that we are a unique and unduplicatable version of Creator Source. And in our individual being, we are a gift unto our Creator, the likes of which the Creator can only get from our individual being. Let our awareness of this be the skyrocketing of our self-esteem.